Recently, on May 28, 2021, the United Nations Security Council extended the arms embargo on South Sudan with the adoption of Resolution 2577 by 13 votes in favor and 2 in abstention. Join us as we discuss this and more on Beyond the Headlines. The United Nations Security Council decided to renew the arms embargo on South Sudan until May 31st, 2022. According to the Security Council, the arms embargo would prohibit the supply, sale, or transfer of weapons, as well as the provision of technical assistance, training, and other military assistance to the territory of South Sudan. We're joined on the program by Ambassador Emmanuel Ajawin, Secretary General of the Leadership Council of the South Sudan Opposition Movements Alliance. Thank you for coming on the program.
Thank you, my sister, for welcoming me into this humble program and to discuss pertinent issues that are pertinent to our country, especially the issues that are emanating from Resolution 2606, 2015, regarding the arms embargo and asset freeze on South Sudan.
Yes, thank you. So to start off, when did the United Nations Security Council first issue an arms embargo on South Sudan, and what prompted them to make the decision?
The United Nations, of course, they have been always seized on the issues of South Sudan. It was of a great concern to them. Not only during the time of the outbreak of the civil war in 2013, but before that, the United Nations started these issues of arms embargo when the government and the opposition started to commit human rights violations and atrocities against civilians. Remember also that the UN has its presence through UNMISS under Chapter 7, which is they have given them the right and mandate to protect civilians in case of any perceived danger. So the resolution, I think, was in 2015, that when Resolution 2206, 2015 was adopted by the UN. And of course, the objective was to target sanctions against individuals and that they are perceived, as I said earlier in my remarks, who they think are against the implementation of peace agreement or who are actually, helping in fueling the civil war in the country, resulting into the displacement of thousands of South Sudanese and killing of innocent civilians. At that time, I was actually the deputy ambassador to South Sudan to the United Nations. Our permanent representative was Dr. Francis Deng. And I think we tried at that time to convince members of the UN Security Council and especially the United States, who are the pen holders regarding the issues of South Sudan being discussed under the United Nations Security Council. But of course, the discourse that we had with them was not convincing enough, because on the ground you had the government and the opposition still engaging in a very furious battles and also continuing creating an unconducive environment for the assistance and also blocking the UN agencies from delivering food to the needy people. So it was incumbent by then on the UN Security Council to come up with something as a preventative measures and what they used to call a stick, so that the parties could at least adhere to any piece of code they sign, and also to be able to take South Sudan from the attune of the conflict into a stable country.
Yes, it appears that the United Nations Security Council imposed the arms embargo in 2018, just five years after the conflict erupted in 2013. And in 2016, the United States had brought the arms embargo to the United Nations Security Council, but it was not voted upon by a large number of countries.
I mean, the initial adoption, of course, what happened in the UN corridors. When I say the US is the pen holders on regarding South Sudan, it is them that initiate, any resolution within the United Nations Security Council pertaining to South Sudan. US at that time, I don't know who was the ambassador at that time, but I remember the US, after a lengthy discussion with many of the members of Security Council, initially starting from 2014, because the whole initiative did not start in 2016, 15 and 16. It actually started way back since the eruption of the war. The US wanted to impose sanctions, but at the end of the day, they were advised that it's not a good time to do it. So they held back a little bit.
The following countries approved the arms embargo being imposed on South Sudan. The countries were China, Estonia, France, Ireland, Mexico, Niger, Norway, Russia, St. Vincent and Grenadines, Tunisia, United Kingdom and Northern Ireland, United States, and Vietnam. There were two countries who abstained from voting on the arms embargo on South Sudan. The two countries were India and Kenya. Now, the Kenyan government went ahead and released a statement as to the reason why they went ahead and ensured that they abstained from voting on the arms embargo. According to the Kenyan government, it is Kenya's belief that the arms embargo and targeted sanctions have not been effective tools in support of the South Sudan peace process. Indeed, they have in certain cases been counterproductive. In this regard, IGAD and the African Union have repeatedly called for the lifting of all sanctions on South Sudan. The government has responded to the arms embargo by issuing statements on the need to have the arms embargo lifted on the country. Ambassador Thomas Kenneth Elisapan, the acting spokesperson in the South Sudan Ministry of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation, stated the following: "These punitive measures undermine the sovereignty of the nation and jeopardize the process of the implementation of the revitalized agreement on resolution of the conflict in the Republic of South Sudan. By extending the arms embargo, graduation of the National Unified Forces will greatly be affected and will eventually weaken the South Sudan to ascertain herself socially, economically, politically, and in any unprecedented aggression internally and externally." What is the mandate of the Security Council and which countries vote on the Security Council resolutions?
Of course, the mandate of the United Nations Security Council is to maintain peace and security, international peace and security, and hence it's incumbent upon them to decide on these issues. If they feel that any country or within a country there is a serious threat to, to the international peace and security, under Chapter 7, they have the right to intervene or initiate a resolution regarding whatever they think is fit, be it arms embargo or be it other issues. So in our case, of course, there are countries that are also sympathetic to South Sudan. But initially, you have the 15 members of the UN Security Council, and you have five members with veto. So it is the 5 members that do really carry the weight because the 10 are on rotational basis. So if the 5 members are convinced and they're unanimous on a certain resolution, mostly it gets adopted. I think what they need is 9 votes out of 15 to adopt a resolution. And in this case, of course, a lot of lobby that starts in the UN Security Council and within the United Nations. When a resolution is tabled, there's a lot of lobbying that goes on, be it at the level of New York or be it the level of the capitals, of these countries. Most of the time, sometimes also a political decision and depends on the political influence, and it depends also on the weight of the country that is initiating the resolution. So based on this, the UN Security Council will decide to adopt, because we know that UN is not just an entity, it's an entity that's composed of individual countries. And these individual countries, of course, are governed by their own also political economic interests.
It is important to note that the UN Security Council is composed of 15 members. There are 5 permanent members who are China, France, Russia, United Kingdom, and United States. Then there are 10 non-permanent members who are elected for 2-year terms by the General Assembly. Now, which countries are involved in selling weapons to South Sudan, including the opposition fighting groups, of course, like the SPLIO, the National Salvation Front? So which countries are involved in this sale of arms?
I will not go to the murky business of the black market of arms and selling of arms. I wouldn't call any countries, but there are countries.
Why
of
not?
course.
Why not?
I mean, these are very sensitive issues, and also they are based sometimes on speculations, sometimes they are based on rumors. And for me to just say country X is involved in selling arms to this country without any tangible evidence before me would be a disservice to the discussion we have, because our discussion, we want it to be objective rather than being subjective.
Mm-hmm. Now, there's a report from the foreignpolicy.com in which it stated that a vast global supply of arms exporters and companies spanning Europe, Asia, and Africa have sustained South Sudan's civil war. What do you have to say to that?
I mean, that is true. There's no doubt about it. There are countries in Eastern Europe. There are countries in Asia that have been facilitating and selling arms to the government in Juba. And of course, also there are countries within the region, because we're not dealing only with the selling of arms, but we're also dealing with the route that they take in terms of delivering them to South Sudan. And there are countries where these arms do pass through. And there are countries where South Sudan use their flags, because remember, we are landlocked, and most of the time we have to use other country flags to bring the shipment. So there are countries that have been also working on these, and they've been facilitating in the deliverance of the arms to the government in South Sudan. Now, the challenge that the international community is facing is that some of the regional countries are actually accomplices in terms of providing access to these arms, illegal arms that are being transferred or being transported to South Sudan. So this also make the arms embargo null and void, because in order for an arms embargo to be effective, the countries that are surrounding the country in question must be able to cooperate with the United Nations resolution and be able to implement it in letter and spirit, so that they could prevent the illegal shipment. But if these countries or these neighboring countries, some of them abstaining from the renewal of the arms embargo, it tells you a lot.
The United Nations Security Council stated that they are willing to alter, suspend, or lift the arms embargo if South Sudan is able to meet 5 important benchmarks. And the benchmarks stated by the United Nations Security Council are as follows. First, the completion by the revitalized transitional government of national unity of stages 1, 2, and 3 of the country's strategic defense and security review. 2, formation of a unified command structure and redeployment of the necessary unified forces. 3, progress on disarmament and remobilization and reintegration. 4, progress on properly managing existing arms and ammunition stockpiles. 5, the implementation of the Joint Action Plan for the Armed Forces on addressing conflict-related sexual violence. The South Sudan government is required to report to the Security Council no later than April 15, 2022 on the progressive achievements of the benchmarks. The Security Council has requested the Secretary General, in close consultation with the United Nations Mission in the Republic of South Sudan, UNMISS, and the panel of experts assisting the Sanctions Committee, to also perform and assess on South Sudan's pathway to achieving the benchmarks. Therefore, Ambassador Ajawin, what is preventing the South Sudan government from implementing the mentioned benchmarks required by the Security Council?
There are a couple of answers to your question. One of them is a lack of political will from the leadership of the regime. especially from the President Kir Mayadi. President Salva Kiir, if you look at him and his behavior towards any accord that have been signed, I'm talking about ARCES and I'm talking about revitalized ARCES. You'll see the president does not look at these peace accords from a strategical point of view to say that the country needs really stability, South Sudanese, they need to heal these wounds and move on. President Kiir has only one interest and one objective, and that is to continue staying in power at all costs. And hence, he does not look at these agreements strategically. And that's the problem we are in. Now, if you look in any agreement, any peace accord that is signed between belligerent forces that had been involved in a serious civil war, the agreement, the security arrangement is the most important aspect of it. Once the security arrangement breaks, then the whole agreement will collapse. Now, we are going actually to the third year since the revitalized ARCES was signed in Khartoum in 2018. And the revitalized ARCES talked about the need of having a joint integrated force, or what we call a new, a security architecture during the pre-transition, which was 8 months. 8 months came and passed by. There was no any unified force, neither even deployed in towns like Malakal, Wawa, and Juba to provide a conducive environment so that the displaced people could come back to their homes. The cantonment sites, it has become a thing of the past. The soldiers, they do come after a while, the opposition, they get fatigued, there's no food, there's no medication, they go back. Even the international community, when the agreement was signed, they said, the government of South Sudan, you need to put $100 million to just show the will that you were serious in terms of implementing the security arrangement. Up to now, I don't know how much they have put. So you could see that the government has killed the security arrangement by not implementing any provisions of it. And by killing the security arrangement, literally, you actually putting the country at another crossroad of another civil war coming. Because when the security arrangement collapses, there's no confidence. Everybody goes back to their garrisons. The IO and the other South Sudanese opposition, they will go back, to their bases, and hence the political process does not go well. Then you will have another round of war happening in the country. So the lack of implementation by the government and the regime in Juba, it is stemmed from their lack of the political will to implement the agreement, and also it lacks of their comprehensive policy, where they don't see peace as a strategic option. They see peace as a way of dismantling the opposition. So it's what I call elimination through assimilation.
Yes, but also the responsibility falls on the opposition groups, including SOMA, which you're a part of.
Well, there's nothing in terms of falling on us, because SOMA is a revolutionary movement that was formed as an alliance, was formed out of as a reaction to the policies of the regime in Juba, the policies of exclusion, the policies of tribalism, the policies of ethnic cleansing of other tribes, and also as a result of corruption and dictatorship. So we are an alliance that is reacting to the oppressiveness of the regime. We cannot be equated with the same regime that has all the arsenal and the force in its hand, that is displacing its people, that is killing its own innocent civilians. So we are not on the same board in terms of moral equality or equivalent.
Yes, but also, the opposition groups within SOMA have also been accused of violating the ceasefire of hostilities as well. So you're considered as part of the aggravators who are really combating with the government itself too.
I think these reports first of all are very subjective, because up to now, if you look at GMEC, that is tasked with the evaluation of the cessation hostilities that we signed, SOMA is not even yet an active member. So who are the people reporting this? They're not members of SOMA. These are the government members who are reporting this. Secondly, if you're talking regarding some members of SOMA, and let's say in Greater Equatoria, they have been always on defense. They have always been on defensive. The government, they are the ones that have been on the offensive. attacking the forces of the opposition. And if the opposition was on the offensive, you can tell me which town have we captured so far? We haven't captured any town from the government. So it tells you that we are not on offensive. It is the government that has been attacking us, and we have been always on defensive.
As part of the revitalized agreement on the resolution of conflict in the Republic of South Sudan, which was signed in September 2018, the South Sudan government and opposition forces should move their troops to joint cantonment sites, turn in their weapons to independently monitored armories, and begin training to form a unified military force. According to Amnesty International, their investigators did not find this disarmament process occurring at any of the 12 sites visited. Some fighters did not bring their weapons to their cantonment sites as awareness of the peace process prompted SSPDF and opposition forces to retain their arms. In other cases, fighters arrived with weapons but then hid them away in their dwellings rather than turn them in. Also, the South Sudan Opposition Movement's Alliance stated in relation to the arms embargo, despite the signing of the ARCAS, the Republic of South Sudan is still witnessing widespread insecurity as a result of proliferation of firearms in the hands of civilians and the state-sponsored violence through the use of proxy militias to fight the opposition. The decision to renew the arms embargo, travel ban, and asset freeze is timely and in right measure for reducing arms violence in South Sudan. Therefore, what does this indicate about the process towards the implementation of the revitalized peace agreement?
You see, thank you for reading the interjection or the statements, perhaps from the UN agencies and also from SOMA press statement, reflecting the issues of the arms embargo and the conflict in our country. But SOMA, we initially refused to be part of the revitalized ARCAS back in September 2018 for the reasons that I've mentioned some of them. That is, that the government of Kir, knowing them, they don't have the political will to implement the agreement, any agreement they sign. Secondly, the Khartoum Peace Agreement did not even discuss holistically or comprehensively the root causes of the conflict in the country. It was an agreement between the elites. It is an agreement between the SPLM and its prefixes, be it SPLM-IO, SPLM-IG, former detainees, for political positioning. They were playing what we call the musical chairs, you know, who gets what. And that's why it ended up in a miserable kind of a formation of what they call the government of national unity that has never seen anywhere in the world, where you have 5 vice presidents, 550 MPs in a country that a population is less than 8 million. US with a population of 300 million, they don't even have 550 MPs. So it was actually an agreement to settle for the political positions that these people wanted. Now, this, of course, when there's no really a clear political roadmap, it will also reflect itself negatively in terms of the army and the integrated force. Yes, the issue in our country, security issues, and the issue of having a national army in our country and a new national security architecture is the main problem. Because as we talk now regarding South Sudan, even the so-called SSPDF, it's not a national army, neither in character, neither in composition. If you could have units or battalions or division being called Twek, which is known in Dinka as a bird, as a woodpecker, or you go for Motianganyor, or you go to Dutkuben, you know, all these are tribal militias, affiliated militias, and Gelweng, you know, all these are tribal militias. They cannot constitute a national army. We say that in order for South Sudan to be democratic, and in order for us to move on, we need to separate the army from the political activities that is in the country. What does it mean? We are saying that the army should not be used for tribal interests. What you have in South Sudan is that the armies are being used for tribal interests to pursue political objective of these so-called leaders in the country. And this is what we are rejecting. We are saying South Sudan needs a new security architecture, a new model where the national security is diverse in character and composition, involving everybody. Even the opposition forces that have signed the agreement with Riek, most of their armies are also tribal. You have the Riek, the SPLM-IO, the so-called the White Army, are purely Nuer, in composition. So we cannot have an army that is composed on tribal basis. That will not be good for democratic transformation that we yearn for in our country.
Now, to the last question here, how can the arms embargo deter the conflict within South Sudan and really decrease the level of insecurity? Because you stated previously that we have such a large amount of weapons within the country.
The problem with the arms embargo, and this has been my contention with many of them who are supporting the arms embargo, is that they have to stop going after the small fish. If you see the individuals that are being called, that are the individuals being identified to be obstacle to the implementation of peace agreement in our country and so forth, these are small generals. You never see clear sanctions. You never see Riek sanction. So if the UN Security Council want to make the arms embargo effective and to achieve its objectives, there's a need, to rethink this soft targeting of assets and freezing of the asset and targeting of individuals who are at the low level. There's a need to go to the senior level, because it is them that do take the decisions. It is them that should be held accountable, for the atrocities that are being committed by their foot soldiers. But in absence of this, the UN Security Council will continue renewing the arms embargo without really serious effectiveness being seen on the ground until they start targeting the big fish.
Yes, thank you, Ambassador Emmanuel Ajawin, for taking the time to share your thoughts and also discuss this important issue about the renewal of arms embargo in South Sudan.
No, thank you so much, and I'm happy to be with to have been with you here, and I hope that we have discussed it exhaustively, and I hope to see you soon again.
Yes, thank you. And to our viewers, thank you for watching Beyond the Headlines, and don't forget to join us next time for more discussions on issues that are relevant to South Sudanese both within the country and the diaspora. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube page at Sunrise Media.